Chapter 3. Tell me that you're all right. Yeah, everything is all right. Oh my God, why did I agree to this? Father Lupin mumbled to himself, his breaths coming up a little short, but considering they were both currently scaling the hedge fence that surrounded the Black family property, Sirius tried not to pause to appreciate the way Lupin's chest was rising and falling underneath the black hoodie he threw on last minute to cover up his very obvious clerical collar. Because you're drunk as shit, and I'm very convincing, Sirius hissed in reply as he vaulted over the top of the fence, landing surprisingly gracefully for how much alcohol was in his system. If I get caught doing this, I'll be excommunicated, out of a job, out of a home, he said, with a slight whine in his throat, though he continued to follow Sirius anyway, climbing a bit more carefully down the other side of the fence than Sirius had. Then again, Sirius had climbed this fence thousands of times when he was younger, back when he'd been locked in his bedroom without food for days at a time. You won't get caught, Roman, he corrected, still having a hard time using that name, knowing it wasn't Lupin's name, but having no better alternative. He was right. It wasn't as cute as Mooney. In fact, Mooney fit him far better than Roman, but he couldn't really use it for both crushes. Besides, he couldn't quite describe why Mooney seemed to fit the priest so well. It just sounded right. If anyone finds us, you bolt into the most convenient direction, and I'll take all the blame. Knowing your mother, she would probably still press charges against you. Not, Roman said, with a heavy sigh as they crept around the corner to the back of the house. It was strange that, after all these years and all this animosity, his mother didn't change the locks on the house to keep him out. But just then, he wasn't really concerned with why. There was something important he hadn't found earlier. Let her, Sirius waved off as he rummaged through his pockets for his keys, his fingers within the black fabric poking through the hole on his jeans that started at the top of his thigh. I've got outstanding lawyers on payroll. She won't win. As Sirius opened the back door, Roman watched him curiously. Are you actually the founder of Something Wicked? He asked in disbelief, standing still. We don't have time for this, love. Let's go, he crooned, taking hold of Roman's arm and pulling him through the open doorway, closing the thick door as quietly as he could behind them. With quiet steps, they moved through the enormous, ancient house. Luckily, Sirius had memorized the pattern of every creak of every floorboard, and despite it having been 15 years since he needed to sneak through these rooms, that pattern was still mostly the same. Strangely, as they began this dance through the safe areas of the floor, he didn't have to instruct Roman to step only where he stepped, and Sirius wondered again just how much of their family trauma was the same. They made it all the way up the stairs and into Regulus's room, behind the closed door, before Sirius was out of breath he'd been holding, as Roman let out a similar breath, and Sirius watched him let it out slowly and carefully so it didn't make noise on its own. Was this why James had mothered him all the time? Because knowing someone else had dealt with that same brand of abuse left an ache in his chest. Okay, it's in here somewhere, Sirius muttered, mostly to himself, as he went rummaging through the same drawers he'd been going through that afternoon, now empty because everything that had been in them was now in the boot of Sirius's car. Unless she set it on fire or something, you never know. It's a picture? Is that what you said? Roman asked, beginning to open more drawers. Yes, Sirius confirmed in a whisper. Of me and my younger brother. Back in the Dark Ages, when we still had to use film, so it's the only copy. He opened the last drawer to find it also glaringly empty. I was about to ask why your mother wouldn't just let you have it, but I've met your mother, he said with an irritated huff, moving towards the wardrobe. Sirius looked back to see surprise on Roman's face at the full rack of clothes. Does your brother still live here? He asked, looking toward Sirius. No, Sirius said bluntly, not elaborating. Before Sirius could look away, something caught his eye within the packed wardrobe. Hang on, he called softly, moving over to slip a particularly black cardigan from the hanger, letting it spread out within his hands, thumbing reverently over the embroidery on the left breast pocket that read, in white thread, Regulus Black, Drama Club. Sirius let out a careful sigh, pulling the fabric up to his face and taking a deep breath in through his nostrils. It still smelled like Reg. Sirius, Roman said gently, reaching out to run his hand down Sirius's shoulder, gripping it softly. Keep looking, Sirius sniffled with an intentional clearing of his throat. Obviously not wanting to bring up anything Sirius didn't want to talk about, Roman did as he was told, kneeling to rummage through the boxes left in the bottom of the wardrobe, as Sirius closed his eyes, still holding the jumper. I think this might be what you're looking for, Roman said, glossy rectangular paper in between his fingers. With a sharp intake of air, when Sirius looked at the photograph, immediate tears sprang into his vision. Sirius couldn't have been more than 10 years old at the time, which meant Reg would have been about 7 or 8. This had been taken by their Uncle Alfred the summer before their mother and father forbade them from visiting him, which Sirius found out later was because Uncle Alfred's friend, William, who adored the boys and had doted on them all summer, wasn't just Alfred's friend. They didn't know then, but that was the last time they would see Alfred. He would succumb to a very aggressive cancer that their parents had never even told them about, that Alfred had never even told them about, and their parents attended the funeral without them, to keep them away from William. But there was no borrowed misery in those boys' expressions. You could see it in Regulus's grin, with both his front teeth missing from where he and Sirius had pulled the already loose ones out a little earlier with fishing wire, so Regulus would have a tooth fairy money to spend at the sweet shop. It wasn't in the careless way Sirius's arm was slung around his younger brother's neck, his smile more like a snarl, showcasing all his tiny, ferocious teeth when his Uncle Alfred had told him to smile hard. Yeah, Sirius said, furiously wiping away the couple tears that broke through the blockade and barreled rebelliously down his reddened cheeks. This is it. Careful not to crease it, he slipped the photo into the inner pocket of his jacket. Grab those boxes, will you? He nodded towards the shoe boxes in the bottom of the wardrobe where Roman had found the picture. He quietly did as he was asked. Your brother isn't with us anymore, is he? Roman asked carefully, setting the boxes onto the edge of Regulus's bed so that he could free one hand to push the errant hair from Sirius's face. No, Sirius replied in a hollow voice, tears still threatening to spill. He's not. To Sirius's surprise, as soon as he closed his eyes, his eyelids pushing the tears onto his cheek, he felt Roman's arm move tenderly around the back of his neck, pulling him in close. And Sirius was more surprised that he let him. How long ago? Roman asked as Sirius's trembling fingers found their way into the fabric of the hooded jacket that Roman had put on to hide the glaring collar he was still wearing around his throat. 13 years? Sirius's voice was thick with tears. He'd been choking back, muffled from the way he was burying his face into Roman's collarbone, feeling the starched edge of Roman's stiff clerical collar against his cheekbone. Sirius burrowed further in, needing to feel the way Roman's arm tightened around the back of his neck, drawing Sirius in as close as he could. Sirius's fists began to unclench. Regulus? Is that the name I saw on his jumper? Roman asked, his voice low and even and warm. Sirius could only nod, burdened by the gentle way Roman spoke that name, his eyes welling to the brink again. Thank you for letting me be here for this, for letting me be here with you. With a weepy smile, Sirius adjusted his gaze, but didn't pull out of Roman's embrace. Are you thanking me for letting you help me break into my mother's house and steal from her? Absolutely, Roman gushed, closing his eyes tightly to show his emphasis before glancing down at Sirius still pressed to his chest. I don't know if I've made myself clear on this subject yet or not, but I despise your mother. He paused for a moment to take in a short breath before adding, and to make my position on the matter even worse, I find myself feeling quite the opposite about you. It wasn't a blush that Sirius felt moving through his skin, like it had been when he'd heard this priest say, in blunt confidence, nobody has a mouth like me. This was something sweeter, something softer, something less incendiary, but warm all the same. It made Sirius want to live within this embrace. You're such a flirt, Roman, Sirius replied under a sheepish half-smile, moving back to bury his face into Roman's chest again, his unclenched fists spreading out flat across Roman's back. Before Sirius could remind himself that this was a priest, actually his priest, Roman continued to surprise him by loosening his grip, his fingers moving to the back of Sirius's neck, up into the coils of Sirius's hair, his thumb sliding upwards along the back of Sirius's ear. It sent a pleasant but nervous shiver down Sirius's spine. Now, unexpectedly, the pain of losing Regulus was no longer in the forefront of Sirius's mind. Suddenly, it was Roman's affection, his tenderness, his sincerity, his warmth, his skin, his touch. Knowing, surely, this wasn't going the way he thought it was leading, Sirius straightened his back to level his face to Roman's, to examine whatever expression he would find there. His surprise magnified, as Roman didn't bother pulling away. Instead, he leaned in, his golden gaze deepened in the dark to the same color as the whiskey they'd gotten drunk on in Roman's basement flat, scattering across Sirius's face, darting inconsistently down to Sirius's lips and back up to his eyes, covering every space. From where Sirius's arms were still wrapped around his waist, he could feel the uneven rise and fall of Roman's chest. Nervous, with breath puffing out his lips, he licked in anticipation. His eyes steadied onto Sirius's gaze. "I shouldn't do this," he whispered, swallowing heavily, but pushing forward despite himself, until his forehead was pressed to Sirius's own, his anxious breath falling into Sirius's waiting mouth. The fingers that were on the back of Sirius's neck shifted again, ghosting down the sharp edge of Sirius's jaw until his fingertips met Sirius's lips. Sirius let his lips fall open to accommodate their movement. "Do you want to?" Sirius asked, pressing a delicate kiss to Roman's fingertips. "Oh, God, do I want to?" His voice was desperate and deep, dredged from the hollows of his heaving chest. Separating Sirius's already slightly parted lips, he dragged his thumb down them on his way to hold Sirius's delicately by the chin. "Stop me, Sirius. Please," he begged, in voice alone, as his body continued to betray him, deliberately tilting his head so that he could brush his warm lips to Sirius's own. "I don't think I can," Sirius spoke into Roman's open mouth, breathing in the taste of the whiskey on Roman's tongue. Finally, Roman slipped his fingers into Sirius's hair, his grip decisively tightening at the base of Sirius's skull as he coaxed Sirius's head back, taking full advantage of the height difference he had over Sirius, and he pressed in with his whole body, mouth open, primed to pull Sirius's lips into his. An audible shifting of the floorboards stilled them both in place, open mouths hovering, breathing halted. Their eyes met, charged in the silence. Roman's fingers, still tucked into Sirius's hair, drew absent in delicate circles at the back of Sirius's neck as Roman studied him, blinking slowly from behind gold frames. They both waited for a signal from the other, a sign to continue or to retreat. Finally, it came. When Roman screwed his eyes tightly shut, the slight wrinkle in his nose shifting his rounded glasses, Sirius knew. The father would take that slight interruption as a sign from God, and maybe he would be right, because this, whatever this was, would never work, and Sirius wasn't worth it anyway. They separated quickly and awkwardly. "We should probably," Roman started. "Right," Sirius agreed immediately. "My mother will kill me if she catches us." Without another word, Roman picked up the boxes of photos he'd set on the edge of Regulus's bed, and they moved back down the stairs in much the same way they'd moved up them, in careful steps and memorized patterns. Once safely back over the hedge fence, after some wisely plotted climbs and careful tossing of the boxes of photos, they started back in the direction of the church, only for Roman to take Sirius by the shoulder, stopping him in place. As Sirius looked over, Roman took an unsteady breath. "Listen, he started to say, fidgeting a little, his grip on Sirius's shoulder sliding up to his collarbone. And Sirius thought he knew where this conversation was leading, with Roman apologizing for nearly kissing him and explaining why he couldn't kiss him, and reasoning that maybe they shouldn't see each other anymore after all. But when Roman's touch moved to Sirius's neck, his thumb stroking gently down the length of his throat, Sirius's grip on the boxes in his hands tightened significantly, eyes widening. The sound of a siren and the lights of a police car startled them both from another near moment, as Roman's hand instantly moved from Sirius's neck to shield his eyes from the headlights of the car. "Is everything all right here, sir?" The officer directed his question to Sirius as he stepped from the car, moving to stand between him and Roman. The man was holding one hand out to Roman, as if keeping him away from Sirius, the other shining a torch specifically into Roman's face. In his confusion, Sirius looked to Roman to find him looking at the ground, his hands half raised at his sides. "Everything's fine," Sirius stated emphatically, assuredly, stepping closer to Roman. "Is he bothering you?" the officer asked, and Sirius was sure the bewilderment was evident on his face as he glanced towards Roman again. His hands were still at his sides, palms facing out. "Is he threatening you?" the officer rephrased, eyes shifting nervously in Roman's direction, arms still level. "What?" Sirius barked, incredulously. No, he repeated, more sharply. "Why are you... He's my priest. Roman, tell him." It wasn't exactly the truth, but Sirius felt the need to bring up Roman's occupation quickly because, for whatever reason, this man seemed to view Roman as a threat. "A priest?" the officer asked Sirius in a tone of disbelief, glancing quickly at Roman with heavily furrowed brows. "Where are you from?" he asked, as if that were at all relevant to the situation. There was a blatant sarcasm in Roman's tone as he flatly answered, "Ireland?" in a heavier Irish lilt than Sirius knew was in his natural speaking voice. The muscles in his jaw twitched as he tensed. "I meant, where is your family from?" the officer clarified, looking rather irritated. "Baltinglass," Roman repeated, enunciating clearly, fingers spread and palms out. "Damn it, stop being smart with me," he threatened, taking a heavy step forward towards Roman, who instinctively straightened his back, his hands moving further up, further back. "What are you?" he barked, and Sirius finally realized what the fuck was going on here. It was because of Roman's skin. "Do you not hear him?" Sirius growled, insistent. "He said he's Irish." He had to bite back every curse word he knew because they were all building in his throat, anxious to slip over his tongue. "My father was originally from India." Roman spoke quickly to dissolve the rapidly escalating tension, casting a cautiously stern expression in Sirius's direction, as if trying to tell him to back down. "Was that so hard?" the officer asked, a stupid laugh in his voice as he looked back to Sirius with a conspiratorial grin. "Knew he looked Arab." It was a good thing he looked away when he did, because Sirius watched the automatic clench of Roman's jaw that left a blatant snarl in his bared, gritted teeth. He reluctantly pulled his lips into his teeth as the arsehole looked back. "Aren't all you people Muslim?" Roman took in a short breath, blinking rapidly. "I was raised Catholic. In Ireland," he repeated with slight emphasis as Sirius silently fumed because it was exactly what Roman fucking said in the first goddamn place. Roman continued. "I'm wearing my collar. I can show you, but I have to unzip my jacket." When Roman spoke, he did so in a voice that was intentionally subdued, deliberately steady. "Slowly," the officer ordered in a biting tone, still holding his arm out, level to Roman's chest. In slow, obvious movements, with one hand still held in place with his palm visible, Roman tugged at the zipper underneath his throat to display his white clerical collar. The officer seemed to let out a breath of relief, but his rigid stature didn't indicate any change in his trust of Roman's character. "What's wrong with your eye? And why was he holding you by the throat?" he asked, turning to Sirius again to pelt him with more questions, as Sirius began to take specific notice of the differences in the way this man looked at Sirius compared to the way he looked at Roman. Whenever he looked at Sirius, it was with concern and compassion, but when his face was turned to Roman, he looked at him with fear and suspicion, like Roman intended to murder him on the spot, even in his fucking clerical collar. "He wasn't holding me by the throat," Sirius growled, getting angry, but hoping that the officer wouldn't notice that he specifically didn't answer the first of those two questions. He was holding me by the shoulder. He paused, not wanting to add homophobia to the tension. Praying. Why did he make you come out here to pray in the dark? He pelted Sirius with another obviously leading question, and Sirius stifled a snarl. Why did he make you come out here? He'd asked. He is walking me back to the church from my house. Sirius told another lie, pointing to his mother's house, hoping to God he was not going to have to wake his mother to prove it. She would not help the situation at all. The officer glanced towards the dark house, then back to Sirius again. My name is Sirius Black. This is my mother's house. I'm in town for the week for my father's funeral. Oh, you're Orion's boy? He asked, an uptick in his voice that made Sirius's blood curdle. No wonder this guy was such a fucking dick. He was friends with Sirius's father. Roman remained silent. Yes, exactly. That's me, he said, probably his biggest of all the lies, because he had never in his life referred to himself as Orion's son. And I just found this box of old family photographs, so we were going to go back to the church for a bit to sort through them, since Father Lupin is delivering the eulogy. Wait, Father Lupin? He asked, leaning in to get a better look, finally speaking to Roman with something other than a threat in his voice. Through a forced smile, Roman nodded, and as the officer patted him on the shoulder, Sirius could see the way Roman tensed at the man's touch. Gosh, didn't recognize you in the dark, Father. He laughed, boisterous and loud, as if anything were funny. Right. We'd better get to work before it gets too late. Sirius forced a smile, too. Right. I'll see you boys on Friday, then. You stay safe out there. It's dangerous walking around at night. Again, he laughed, and the sound of it left Sirius gritting his teeth. With one last whirl of his siren, he drove off in the opposite direction. Immediately, Roman let out a breath, running his fingers through the black and gray stubble on his face, pulling his mouth open as he let his head fall back. Are you all right? Sirius asked carefully as he watched Roman run his fingers through his hair. Yeah, of course, Roman replied with an overcompensating grin as he nodded for Sirius to follow him back to the church. Sirius fell into step, hustling to keep up with Roman's long stride. I'm not surprised a racist arsehole was friends with my dad, Sirius grumbled. Now you know why I don't take the collar off, Roman said with a careful sigh, but he continued right after. Honestly, I should have seen this coming when I agreed to break into your mother's house. He laughed, but it was sarcastic and biting. I'm lucky he didn't catch me climbing the hedge. I shouldn't have asked you to do that. Do you get treated like this a lot? With another deep breath, Roman continued. This place isn't the most, I'll say, progressive. Then why do you stay here? Sirius asked, genuinely curious. Hell, he'd left 15 years ago and had never missed this place. There was kind of a sad honesty on Roman's face as he answered. Who else would help these kids? He asked, lowering his head to rub the back of his neck, all of his hair falling forward into his face. When I met Teddy, that kid I was telling you about, he was living on the street, kicked out of his house at 13 because his foster dad found out he was gay. He was lucky you were there, Sirius smiled. But is it just luck? Roman asked with an inquisitive glance in Sirius's direction, his expression somewhere between a smile and uncertainty. 4 years of seminary and 6 years of practice, and I still couldn't tell you if I believe in divine intervention or not, despite what I've been taught to preach. A priest with no faith? Sirius questioned, eyebrows high. I never said I don't have faith. Roman grinned widely as they walked up to the church, though he led them around the church, back to the garden. I don't believe doubt is the opposite of faith. In fact, I don't think you can have faith at all without it. Otherwise, it's just a fact, isn't it? Facts require no faith. How so? Sirius asked, lowering his voice as Roman peeked through the back door, but he didn't go inside. Instead, he leaned against the exterior of the church and took in a deep, calming breath. I don't have to have faith in the sun for it to warm the earth. It's there. I can see its light. I can feel its heat. The sun is a fact. With a mischievous grin, Roman leaned over and began patting the pockets of Sirius's jacket until he found the pack of cigarettes, and he didn't hesitate at all, reaching into Sirius's pocket himself to take it, his fingers wriggling against Sirius's waist. A cigarette between his teeth, he lit it, stoking the flames with his breath before continuing. On the other hand, he said, pausing to inhale a deep breath of smoke and nicotine. My mother's love? I have some evidence of it. Letters she'd written me before my parents died. Pictures of us together. But I have to maintain a certain level of faith that she loved me because I can no longer see it or feel it. At the same time, there is a constancy of doubt that I can never eliminate because her love is now just an idea, just a memory. And if I try to remove that doubt, then I remove everything that gives that faith meaning. Otherwise, it's just blind submission. Stealing back his own pack of cigarettes from the priest, Sirius lit one, taking in a deep breath as he looked back to Roman. My problem is I've got all the doubt and none of the faith. Hard to believe in a benevolent higher power when I had to watch my Bible-thumping father beat my younger brother until he was bruised for getting a bad mark in maths. On the hollow exhale, he winced a bit as he saw the concern in Roman's expression. Sorry, I'm complaining to the wrong audience, aren't I? You're forgetting about the fact that I upended a whiskey bottle when we got on the subject of my family, Roman said with an acrid laugh. My doubt outweighs my faith, constantly. The only difference is I'm required to pretend it doesn't because of my chosen profession. By the way he spoke, with a pause and a flash of his thick brows and an irritated purse of his lips, Sirius knew. You didn't want to be a priest, did you? With a laugh, Roman immediately shook his head. God, no, he groaned, throwing his head back dramatically to let it burn through his throat. Then why stay? Why do it? Sirius asked, taking another long drag, trying not to pay attention to the way Roman had let himself drift a bit toward Sirius, where they leaned against the church building. So that I can subvert my grandfather's intent by nurturing the queer kids in this community, instead of shipping them off to straight camp, like he used to. An uncomfortable mass moved into Sirius's throat as he thought about the meaning in those words, matched to the anger in Roman's face. Is that what he did with you? Sirius asked carefully. Nearly, Roman said with a pained smile. The only reason he didn't is because he was the priest then, and he didn't want people knowing his grandson was bent. Sent the boy I got caught with, though. So you got caught in the act, too? Sirius said with a knowing wince. Kissing a boy behind the stands at a municipal rugby match, Roman answered, and Sirius could swear there was an arrogance in his smile before he took another drag on his cigarette. You? Caught with my shirt halfway off in my bedroom with the boy I was supposed to be doing a science project with. He laughed boisterously before holding his hand over his mouth to cover the noise of his own laughter. I'm surprised I didn't kill my father with a heart attack right that moment. You got there in the end, Roman winked, then winced with his whole face, like he thought he shouldn't have said that. You should have heard my argument. I tried convincing my grandfather that I kissed that boy to prove to myself that I wasn't gay. You can imagine how well that worked out for me. When he laughed, it was soft and light and subdued, but Sirius could hear the depths in his chest that told him of how much brighter that laugh could be, how much fuller, how much more joy he had left to put into it. I didn't have an excuse, Sirius said, shaking his head. It wasn't exactly what it looked like. Before Sirius could put the cigarette back to his lips, he let slip an untimely yawn, trying to cover it quickly. Jesus, it's 2 a.m, Roman said with a groan as he glanced at his watch. Oh, there it is, Sirius said with a victorious grin at the way Roman let a very Irish pronunciation of the word Sirius had been trying to get him to say earlier. Say it again. I like that a lot. Instead, Roman just rolled his eyes, but the coy smile on his face betrayed him. Where are you staying? Do you live close? God, please don't tell me you're being forced to stay with your mother. With a shrug, Sirius answered, I've just been driving in every day. My flat is just outside of London, so it's not really that far of before he could say more, Roman stood, watching Sirius with a raised brow. Sirius, that's nearly a 2-hour drive, he stated sternly, tossing his own cigarette onto the pavement and leaning in to take Sirius's cigarette straight from his mouth, not shy about the flagrant way his fingertip brushed against Sirius's lips. As he looked back to Sirius after flicking the cigarette onto the pavement and stomping the embers out with his heel, he held out his hand the same way he had that morning, and somehow it felt like a lifetime ago. The hesitation that had been there this morning was absent, and Sirius took Roman's hand in full, reveling in its warmth and strength and comfort. And when Sirius stood, Roman didn't take a step back to accommodate his presence. If anything, he moved in, letting their entwined hands drift lazily down to their sides. "Stay with me tonight," Roman requested in a hushed voice, absently pushing his fingers between Sirius's own, his honey eyes searching Sirius's face. But when Sirius's brows raised and eyes widened, that deep burgundy blush drove through Roman's skin, the full moonlight highlighting freckles that Sirius hadn't seen in the sun. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for that to sound as salacious as it did." He laughed lightly, but he didn't step away in the slightest. "You're such a flirt, Roman," Sirius repeated, taking Roman's other hand in his own. "I might have to change my name now. I really like the way you say that one." He exhaled heavily, edging his face a bit closer to Sirius's again, until their foreheads were nearly pressed together. "Be honest. If I kissed you right now, what would you do?" Sirius asked, craning his neck so that he could very purposefully, but very delicately, brush his lips against Roman's, enjoying the unsettled way Roman breathed in response to the soft simulation. His expression was just short of torturous. He said, pausing to take several heaving breaths as he tilted his head forward to feel Sirius's lips against his again. "I'd enjoy it immensely." And when he spoke, he pressed a desperate moan into the words and into Sirius's open mouth. But before Sirius could surge forward, he added, "For a few good seconds," he said, closing his eyes tightly, "before the overwhelming guilt induced a panic attack." "Damn it," Sirius said with a soft laugh, speaking against Roman's lips, and the helpless agony in his expression only intensified. "I would just feel dreadful if I kissed you into a panic attack." Wordlessly, Roman blinked dreamily at him. "I'm still weighing risk versus benefit, and I really want to say it would be the most worthwhile panic attack I've ever had." He drew his lips into a half smile. "My only concern," Sirius teased, licking his lips so that his tongue would deliberately wet Roman's lips, "is that you would find out how good a kisser I am, and I would inevitably lead you astray with my godless seduction." In his impatience, Roman pressed forward just enough to let the bridge of his nose slide down Sirius's own, his hands moving from Sirius's fingers up to Sirius's face, holding him just underneath the edge of his jaw with both hands. The way he tilted Sirius's head back felt decisive. "Christ, say godless seduction to me again." Roman laughed, and this time it was the laugh that Sirius knew lived in his lungs, heedless and deep and dangerous, and it sparked a growl in the back of his throat that left Sirius leaning further into his body to feel the way it rumbled within Roman's chest. "Better yet, tell me your first name so I can moan it into your ear," Sirius bargained, his hands drifting up to Roman's chest, gripping tightly onto the zipper of his jacket. With a seething breath of frustration, Roman's grasp on Sirius's throat strengthened substantially as he pressed Sirius heavily into the wall of the church, letting all of his weight rest against Sirius, hips first and everything in between. The surprised change in pace moved the breath from Sirius's lungs all at once, and as he raised his head to try and draw it back in, Roman nuzzled his face into the space along Sirius's throat. "Why the fuck are you doing this to me?" Roman whined, but his body's intentions didn't follow the worry in his voice, as Sirius felt him roll his hips against Sirius's in order to nestle into the space between Sirius's legs. Sirius wasn't sure what did it. Maybe it was the feeling of Sirius, rigid against him. Maybe it was the way Sirius panted a name that wasn't really his. Maybe that guilt he'd been worried about had finally overcome him. Whatever it was, Roman's shoulders lost their tension all at once, and Sirius felt his feet touch the pavement, though he hadn't even been aware that Roman was holding him off the ground. Despite the resolve in his touch, despite the dilation of his dark eyes, despite the heave of his chest, with a deep breath of new air, he pulled back a bit, his hand still on Sirius's face, and placed a tender kiss to the tip of Sirius's nose, letting out a heavy exhale, followed by a quiet, apologetic smile. The guilt won. He smiled, but it was practically angry. He ran his hands through his hair, letting his fingers drag down the underside of his jaw, ruffling the thick, unkempt stubble there that covered his face. And Sirius smiled at the way his unmanageable curls swept in around both ears. If they hadn't been standing under the moonlight, Sirius was fairly certain he would have seen the pink in Roman's ears. Maybe I should go, Sirius offered, reasonably, because Sirius was only making this worse by being here, and it could get exponentially worse if Sirius stayed over, after all the liquor they'd consumed. Don't, Roman said quickly, taking hold of Sirius's hand again. Please. To avoid looking at the weakness in Sirius's expression, Roman brought Sirius's hand up, looking at the chipped black paint on his fingernails and the red, heart-shaped tattoo he had on his middle finger. I promise I'll behave. It's not you I'm worried about, Roman, Sirius spoke insistently, closing his fingers around Roman's hands. I've got nothing to lose if I give in right now. Take you to your bedroom and... He stopped himself, suddenly aware of the despairing way Roman was waiting for Sirius to admit just what he wanted to do with him. I'm putting you in an awkward position, and I shouldn't be. As Roman's eyes fell closed, and a delicate smile moved over his features, he leaned in and pressed a soft, lingering kiss to the heart on Sirius's middle knuckle. Remember when you said, once I got to know you, I would no longer find you lovable? He paused, looking up at Sirius over the tops of his golden glasses, with his golden eyes and heavy lashes. That was the biggest fucking lie I have ever heard. Sirius couldn't stifle the laugh that barreled out through his teeth. Damn it, Roman. I'm trying to be quiet. Aren't there other people who live in the church? He hissed in a loud whisper as Roman opened the back door again and pulled Sirius into the dark hallway, down the pitch black of the stairs. There's a nun named Mary who lives upstairs, but she knows I'm a degenerate, so it's fine, he said with a slight laugh, tugging at Sirius's hand. In the dark, without seeing which stair he was currently standing on, Sirius lurched forward. And, apparently, Roman had already opened the door and turned, because Sirius stumbled directly into his chest, his face colliding with the starched edge of the collar around Roman's throat. Without missing a beat, Roman said, with Sirius still heavy against him, See, this is the other reason I don't take the collar off. My neck is my weak spot. That would have ruined me. You shouldn't admit that while I'm still this close to you, Sirius warned, adjusting slightly so that he could press an open kiss to the corner of Roman's jaw, just above the collar. In the dark, Sirius could see the expression of surprise on Roman's face, but he could hear the burdensome breath that Roman exhaled hard through his nostrils. He could feel the way Roman's hands tightened on his waist. Fuck, Roman groaned loudly, nuzzling his face against Sirius's for a moment. I thought you just said you shouldn't be putting me in an awkward position, and yet here the fuck we are. Just in case Roman couldn't do it, Sirius pulled himself away, smiling like an idiot as Roman turned on the lights. Listen, I'm drunk too, Sirius argued, and I get handsy when I'm drunk. Oh my God, Roman growled, pulling his hands through his hair as he made a wide circle around where Sirius stood to prevent any further contact. I have to go lock myself in my bedroom for a while. Does the celibacy thing include... Sirius started to ask, but Roman interrupted quickly. Yes, he said, emphatically, through tightly clenched teeth as he leaned out of his bedroom door, giving himself one last glance of longing at Sirius, all the way down and all the way back up again. Are you sure it's okay for me to stay? Maybe I should go bunk with Mary, Sirius offered, biting down on his lip as he watched Roman want him. But Roman's desperation turned into a laugh. There are blankets and pillows in the cupboard behind you. He nodded, the misery in his voice laxed into something a bit more comfortable. Sleep in as long as you like. I'll try not to wake you." "I wish you would." Sirius grinned foolishly, glancing at Roman from over his shoulder as he pulled a blanket and a pillow from the cupboard behind Roman's front door. "I'd really like to wake up with you." "Fuck me," Roman growled, vowels lingering, as he shut his bedroom door less than gently. From the opposite side of the closed door, he called, "Good night, Sirius, you godless seductor." As he settled onto the couch with an arrogant grin, Sirius called back, "Good night, Father." But before he could let himself drift off to dreams of Roman, he had a text to send. "Pedfoot. So, turns out, I'm sleeping over at the priest's. Mooney. First of all, hi, I missed you. Second of all, I thought priests were celibate." Pedfoot. "Oh no, he's totally celibate. Tried to kiss him. Twice, actually. Shut down both times. I'm on the sofa." Mooney. "That's rough, buddy. You sure you don't need some release? Sounds frustrating. I could get you off very quickly." Padfoot. "Oh God, on the priest's sofa? With him in the next room? Jesus, can you imagine? Side note, God damn it, Mooney." Mooney. "I said what I said. Maybe he'd be into it. Listening to you come, I mean." Padfoot. "Jesus fucking Christ." Mooney. "Does celibacy include masturbation?" Padfoot. "You know, I tried to ask him that, and I believe I got a yes." Mooney. Honestly, I bet it doesn't even matter. Who's gonna fucking know?" Padfoot. "God!" Mooney. "Oh, right. Sucks for your priest." Padfoot. "Well, he is kind of a rule breaker. I mean, he smokes and drinks." Mooney. "You want to test that theory? How loud are you?" Padfoot. "I am not masturbating on the priest's sofa." Mooney. "I'm just saying, maybe he's masturbating to you. Right now. Right this moment." Padfoot. "Are you turned on by this scenario?" Mooney. "Hey, you're the one with the priest kink. Hang on. Listen, this is a foolproof test. If he makes you breakfast in the morning, he definitely wanked over you." Padfoot. "Fuck off. Maybe he's just nice." Mooney. "Oh my God. You're expecting him to make you breakfast, aren't you? Just how far did you get with this kiss?" Padfoot. "It didn't even get to the kiss." Mooney. "Sounds fake, but okay. Wait, be honest. Were you panting into his open mouth? Yes or no?" Padfoot. "Oh my God, Mooney." Mooney. "That sounds like a yes." Padfoot. "Fuck, it's a yes." Mooney. "Shit, I fucking knew it. The priest is into you, babe. Well done, Padfoot." Padfoot. "I'm confused. Aren't you into me?" Mooney. "Oh, I'm really fucking into you. I'm just trying to get you horny. And if the priest does it for you, hell, I'll reap his benefits. As long as you're into me, too." Padfoot. "You know I am, you slick bastard." Mooney. "More than the priest?" Padfoot. "The priest is not even an option. And technically neither are you. Which means you are not allowed to be jealous." Mooney. "You slick bastard. All right, I'll stop trying to get you off. On the priest's sofa. But leave tomorrow night open for me." Padfoot. "If you text me tomorrow, the way you've been texting me today, I'll come apart." Mooney. "I don't want you to come apart. I just want you to come." Padfoot. "Fuck. Good night, Mooney. I have to stop texting right now. Like, immediately." Mooney. "Oh, Padfoot, love. Am I getting you hard?" Padfoot. "Good night, Mooney." Mooney. "Good night, lover boy." Christ, was this getting complicated? Nearly kissing Roman, twice, being solicited to have phone sex, text sex, with Mooney, and Sirius didn't even know which of them he liked more. The way he spoke to them felt so similar. The way he felt about them was so similar, but they were such wildly different people. Not to mention, he couldn't really be with either one of them. How could he have gotten in so deep with both of them after only a day? Before he could give it more thought, he'd fallen asleep.